And it is that process that leads us to this place called respect. Respect is simple, but it's not easy. We can't get to respect unless we are willing to make time to get to know each other at a deeper level than we typically do and understand the differences that make our experiences so different from one another. That's the essence of respect. And so if I had to give it a definition, we'll kind of simplify it. Here's what it is. Respect is an active process of non-judgmentally engaging people. Non-judgmentally, meaning when I see differences, I seek to understand, but I don't judge them as good or bad or better or worse. They're just differences. And if I'm really committed to this, I will do this with people from all backgrounds. Some people are just a little bit different than us. How many of you know some people who are like, I don't know if there's enough hours in the day for me to really fully appreciate that person. But if I'm really committed to respect, that's kind of what I'm signing up for. So I'm going to make the point to find out, without judging, as much about you as I can. But why would I do that? Because the human brain is always doing a cost-benefit analysis. If I'm going to spend money on or energy on something, I better get something from it in return. What do we get from that kind of investment in each other? What do you think?
I think in some cases we get a deeper understanding of ourselves.
You're absolutely right. We see ourselves maybe more clearly based on how we see other people. Well, in essence, what we do is we increase both our awareness of other people and ourselves at the same time, but also we become exponentially more effective at working together. Why does your and my increased awareness of one another, and maybe even of ourselves in the process, why does that make us more effective working together?
Communication. You can learn their style.
Okay, we learn their style. What else? We complement one another, sure. Here's something else about the human brain. The human brain loves when things are predictable, which is one of the challenges with an organization like P&G going through change right now. When there's a lot of unpredictability and uncertainty actually feels like pain to the brain. And so when I have to work with people that I don't really understand, it is hard. It's hard work for me. If I'm willing to make that investment in you and you make it in me, we become much more predictable around one another. In fact, this is how many of you are NBA fans are watching the Cavaliers and the Warriors right now? Stayed up late last night, go Cavs. And there's a term that we use in basketball called court awareness. How many of you have heard of the term court awareness? And basically what that means is, even without being able to see you, I kind of know where you are and where you're going to be. Because why? What have we done over and over again? We've practiced with each other. I can do a no-look behind-the-back pass because I know that someone else has just set a screen for you, so you came over here and you're open now, so I can pass the ball to you. We become infinitely easier to predict how one another are going to respond and how we can complement each other when we make this investment. Now, here's the last part of the definition that I think actually is what kind of gives it its impact. It's the standard that we hold ourselves to, so that every time I engage you or anybody else, the question I'm trying to positively answer is, have I treated you in a manner that has esteemed you and esteemed me at the same time? Have I communicated that you're valuable to you and held myself in high regard at the same time? If we did nothing else as employees at Procter & Gamble after today, if we did nothing else, but we made it our responsibility to do a better job of esteeming our colleagues, do you think that would make a difference? Of holding up a mirror to show somebody the value that they create for me and for others in the organization. That's what esteem is all about. That's the essence of the emotional impact of respect. When someone has truly respected me, I feel valued in their presence. And this is an important part of the definition that I'd like you to think about. And I also like you to think about this as whether it's written technically in your job description or not, this is part of your job. It's to value and esteem one another in what you do. So what I'd like to do now is I'd like to actually get into the mechanics of respect and disrespect. I'd like each of you to think, you have a part in your handout. There's a page. It's on the second page. At the top it says, how respect builds. And it says behaviors on the left-hand column and emotions on the right-hand column. What I would like each of you to do, we'll just take about a minute to do this. I'd like you to think, first of all, think of a time that you still remember when you genuinely felt that you were respected, you were treated with respect by somebody. And what I want you to do is dissect that experience into the behaviors that they demonstrated and how it made you feel. So think about very specifically, what were the clues that your eyes, ears caught that they did that were, quote, respectful? And as a result of those behaviors to, for, or around you, how did it make you feel? Just take about a minute. Thank you, Mike. Warning, warning, here comes Mike. Okay, you're welcome to continue writing as we kind of flesh this out together. What are some of the behaviors, the signals, the clues that we leave for other people that we're being treated, that we're either treating them with respect or they're treating us with respect? Engagement. So we're actually engaging one another. What else?
Eye contact.
Okay. Making
Listening, nodding.
eye contact and attentiveness.
Reflection.
Say that again.
Reflection. So parroting back your perspective.
So reflection or paraphrasing. Compliments. Excellent. What else?
Actively seeking me out.
Yes. Seeking me out. And seeking me out for what? Could be for my opinion.
Opinion, my expertise. Anything that's important to me that they want to learn about.
Maybe to give me a challenging assignment because they know that I've got the capacity to handle it. Okay? All right? Great. What else? Other behaviors. Showing trust. And maybe that's the absence. Someone in this morning session, they said it's by not micromanaging people. Right? So any overt sign, trust. Okay? It could be by supporting us. We're not present, someone's taking pot shots at us, and someone says, no, actually, Richard had a great idea. And that wasn't Richard's fault. Richard can only do so much with what he's given. So someone who comes to our defense. How about somebody who offers to help us when they see us struggling? Okay? So offering assistance. There's so many things it could be. Now, let's look at this, because these are just the triggers that cause us to go over to this column. When we were the beneficiaries or the recipients of these, what emotions came online for us? What did it feel like?
Feel valued.
Valued. What else? Appreciated. Understood. Important. Energized. Happy. What else? Included. What else? Warm. Mm-hmm. Cared for. Thank you. I was hoping I feel safe. Remember we talked about our radar, our threat radar. We feel safe, which frees up our prefrontal cortex. Anything else?
Part of the team.
Part of the team, absolutely. All right, now I want you to think of your morning routine. I have my morning routine. I get up and shower and usually My wife or I'll take the kids to school in the morning, and then we get back, we get ready to go to our respective workplaces. I have, like most of you, how many of you have a backpack that you carry your stuff in? And this follows us around my back, usually one or at least sometimes two computers are in here, books that I'm reading. And this gets parked over at my desk. I take out the stuff that I need. The rest of it just kind of sits there. Sometimes I even give it its own seat. How many of you have a special seat just for your backpack in your offices? Well, there's another backpack of sorts that we take with us too. And this is the one that has, only this one doesn't come off. This one stays with us all day. It's the one that we carry around all our emotions with. And I'd like you to imagine for a moment that 30 days from now, we're actually getting more people personally committed to creating a more respectful work environment. And they actually know what it means. So we're seeing more of these behaviors around one another. And as a result, you and I are walking around with this in our, quote, emotional backpack. We're feeling valued, appreciated, understood, important, energized, happy, included, safe, warm, part of the team. What kind of work are you likely to be doing when that's what's in your backpack? On behalf of Procter & Gamble. Breakthrough work. How many of you are doing your best work when this is your payload? And by the way, how heavy is this to carry around with you? This has helium balloons. This is like carrying me around. This is awesome stuff. I'd take more of this if I could get it in there, right? Well, I have some disappointing news for you. Well, first of all, I'll tell you the disappointing news is when people treated you like this, you know what they really did? They drugged you. They literally drugged you. Because these emotions are the byproduct of a release of very potent neurotransmitters and neurohormones in our bodies. Specifically, what we refer to as the pleasure circuit drugs. We have serotonin, oxytocin, and dopamine. And I don't mean to become overly technical, but serotonin is directly tied to our sense of happiness, our sense of well-being. Oxytocin, a compound found only in mammals, is directly related to our sense of trust. You've heard of in-groups and out-groups. We code each other as friend or foe based on oxytocin. And when you go out of your way to treat me with respect, I actually chemically code you in my own brain as somebody who's part of my in-group, someone who helps me. And in fact, mothers nursing infants, huge release of oxytocin in both that chemically codes and bonds us to one another. Dopamine is the actuator that says, because I feel happy, a sense of wellness and safe around you, and you're part of my team, now I'm going to go and reciprocate by doing this, this, and this. So this is really, what's so interesting about this is that it's extremely predictable. Treating people with respect isn't about warm, fuzzy kumbaya. It's about biology. Because when this is my chemical payload based on how I'm treated with other people, it brings these online. And those have some very important business implications. In fact, we're gonna take something that most of us, how many of you remember Maslow's hierarchy of needs? We're gonna turn it on its head right now. So in Maslow, those of you who remember Abraham Maslow, according to him, we had 5 different stages of needs that had to be met in sequence, right? The first order needs were purely biological. Food, water, and sex. Because without those, there was no next generation, period, right? After that was what? Anybody? Shelter and safety, right? Followed by basically being included in a group. Love and affiliation. Followed by autonomy, and then how many of you are self-actualized? All right. Now, a friend of mine, Dr. Matt Lieberman, he's a professor of neuroscience. By the way, I do not have a PhD in neuroscience. I hang out with a lot of people who have PhDs in neuroscience, and I sleep at a Holiday Inn on occasion, Express, so I can glean that information second-handedly. But I don't have the temperament, but I love people who do, because I take what they come up with in their experiments, and we try to apply it towards cohesive themes in organizational development. Matt wrote a book called Social, Why Our Brains Are Wired to Connect. And one of his comments was, love and belonging might seem like a convenience we can do without, but our biology is built to thirst for connection because it is linked to our most basic survival needs. And now we have 2 interesting but complementary lines of thought coming out of neuroscience and anthropology that are saying, in fact, food, shelter, and safety and water, those are not our first order need. Our first order need is affiliation. Why do you think scientists and anthropologists are coming to that conclusion? Because even once we reach the age of self-sufficiency or maturity, we are never able to provide those other needs as well at an individual level as we can as part of a group or a community. In fact, in tribal customs, what is the most severe form of discipline that can be handed out to somebody in the tribe? Being kicked out of the tribe. Because that is, in many ways, that is a death sentence all by itself, right? And so because of that, our brains have actually developed, this is what's so fascinating to me about this, our brains have developed special circuitry that only activates in the presence of other people. We are designed biologically to do our best, most productive work when we are stitched together as part of the fabric of other people in a community. How many of you remember the movie Avatar? There's this great scene in there where they're all kind of like, all have their hands on each other's shoulders, and it's almost like this moving tapestry, this moving fabric of human beings. If you could actually see the connections that exist between us at this level, at the way our brains are kind of relying on each other for stimulus, that's what it would look like. We are actually stitched together, and we are designed to do our best work when we're part of a fabric of other people. That's why respect is so important, because it takes the brakes off of this and allows us to do our best work. So respect can be practiced by any action or behavior that promotes another person's well-being or makes them feel connected to you or the communities that sustain them. So ask yourself, as you're moving around from interaction to interaction, am I making people feel connected and making them feel safe? Or am I making them feel vulnerable? If you're making them feel safe and connected, you are quintessentially treating them and yourself with respect. Now, let's imagine that all of a sudden this starts to take root. And it's not just me, not just you, but all of a sudden as an organization, we're becoming very proficient at this. And that is, in fact, what we're ending up with is a fabric of people who feel as though they're connected. First of all, we know that this correlates with higher job satisfaction. Doing the same exact job, people rate a higher level of happiness doing that work when they feel connected and respected. We know that we are physically and mentally healthier. We actually are less prone to dis-ease. We actually have an easier time attracting, engaging, and keeping the very best talent out there. Now, this doesn't mean that nobody's ever going to leave us, but what does it mean? It's going to be a harder decision for people to leave us because they're not just leaving a payroll or a paycheck. They're actually leaving being part of an active, vital group of people. We know that it's the gateway to authentically inclusive cultures. When we become good at this, it makes it much easier for different groups to become engaged. Communication improves significantly. Has anybody ever been in a group, and I know this can be a challenge within some of the groups here, but has anybody ever been in a group where everybody shared everything? And if someone even knew that you needed something without you asking, you could count on them giving it to you. That's what happens in cultures of respect, is people organically, freely share any information that they know is going to be helpful to their peers. And they can count on the same. This is important for this organization. We are much more creative and innovative. Why would we be more creative and innovative? Because of this warm, squishy thing called respect. We kind of jettison this fear of failure or being judged on our ideas. What else?
From a time standpoint, you free up your mind to think about more creative things.
Yeah, we're not managing relationships. That's another part of it. There's another one. So by not avoiding and being hostile, we have more energy to devote to the process. But there's been a lot of research in this field of innovation. And I don't know if any of you have also read this, but it tends that the most patents come out of cities with the highest population density. So Silicon Valley, New York, Boston tend to have been hot pockets. So there's actually... So they were trying to make sense, the researchers were trying to make sense of this. Why is there a correlation between population density and the number of new ideas that are generated? And what the conclusion was is because innovation and creativity is not a singular event. Even the most creative or innovative person needs what to continue to be innovative and creative? They need other people who are smart to share their ideas so they can take this smart and come up with a whole different kind of smart idea. And in a respectful environment, we have much more of those interactions, much more people, much more likelihood of smart people sharing their best ideas in an unforced, organic way, and we just naturally become more creative. And we bring more ideas to market faster than our competitors do. We see an improvement in customer satisfaction. Has anybody in here ever had a less than friendly customer service experience? Yeah, exactly. Never. But think about it. If you were at work and you were treated in a way that you didn't feel respected by your peers or your boss, say, how likely would it be that you would be bringing your best self to the customers? Not very. So when we focus on this internally, we make it much more likely that our customers are going to have a better back-end experience with us. We become more productive and ultimately more resilient. We make it through tough times intact and together rather than falling apart. All because of this thing called respect. Now what we're going to do, since we've explored that extreme to the left, let's go to your right. Let's go to the left. And let's talk about disrespect. So what I want you to do on the next page is I want you to do the exact same exercise, or in the next set of exercises, next set of blocks, and I want you to think of a time when you were treated with disrespect. And I want you to identify the behaviors that were present that made you feel disrespected, and the emotions that came online as a result of that. Again, take about a minute. Take about 30 more seconds. Now continue writing if you're not quite done yet, but let's start thinking about this. Did this experience come to mind more quickly or more slowly than the first experience? How many of you found that you could remember the disrespectful instances much more quickly? The vast majority of people fall in this category. Anybody want to guess why? And because it hurts, what? It sticks. Anything that harms or threatens me, even a little bit, immediately goes to long-term storage in my memory. Why? So I can match that pattern in the future and get away from it and stay away from it to protect myself. This is part of the human brain, things it does really well. We remember these with greater clarity and much more robustly than we do. And anybody who's in a leadership capacity, I'll say right now, this is a particular liability. If you have a reputation of injuring or damaging people emotionally, you will never, ever be a fully competent leader because you're causing injury to people. And that's the first thing, whenever they see you, that's the first thing that's going to come to mind. We'll talk about what to do about that if that ever happens accidentally. But let's talk about the behaviors. What kinds of behaviors made you feel, quote, disrespected? Anybody?
Ignored.
Being ignored. What else? Being dismissed or written off. What's that? Yes, multitasking. Exactly. How many of you have ever been talking to somebody about something that's important and they're sitting there checking their text messages, right? So multitasking, being interrupted, spoken over, being chastised or blamed. Say that one more time.
Called derogatory names.
Derogatory names, sure. Derogatory names or otherwise insulted. Not listened to. Is that so? Not listened to. Not consulted, possibly. Okay. Social distance. Who said that? And so, what did you mean? So, turn that into a behavior for me.
So, like lack of eye contact, just physical avoidance.
Physical avoidance. Yes.
The opposite of social. Physical.
Sure. Okay. So, physical avoidance, and somebody else I think said something else that I missed. Any other behaviors that you can think of that made you feel disrespected?
Projection.
Okay.
Having the other person treat me as if her ideas or preferences or beliefs are mine.
Oh, okay. So they make assumptions about you that are inaccurate. Assumptions, projections. Being mischaracterized. Lack of empathy. Being excluded. Do you see how quickly this list populated itself? And we're pretty much out of space here. But we could have a whole other sheet if we really wanted to, couldn't we? What's really important is what happens on the other side of the ledger. So when you were treated to these kinds of behaviors, I use the word treated euphemistically, how did it make you feel? What emotions came online for you? Angry. Minimized. Tired. Physically tired. Hurt. Rejected. We have angry already. We have nervous or insecure. Demotivated. Threatened. Someone this morning said spiteful. Don't get mad. Get even. Undignified. Okay. Wow. Any others? How about embarrassed? What's that? Embarrassed, yeah. All right. Now remember that other backpack that I mentioned that had all these great things in it and we felt valued, appreciated, understood, important, and energized? Even though it doesn't happen always, let's just say that even once a week, I'm walking around and I'm feeling angry, minimized. At the end of the day, just plain tired, worn out, hurt, rejected, nervous or insecure, demotivated, threatened, spiteful, undignified, embarrassed or humiliated on occasion. What kind of work do you think you're doing for P&G on those days? Not my best, and what research would tell us is probably not at all. And the reason, why would we, in some cases, depending on how severe it is, why would we not be doing any work at all? Yeah, it's not just my energy. What else is it? What part of my brain has been deactivated? My prefrontal cortex. I've gone into fight or flight mode with some of these behaviors over here. I've been interrupted, spoken over, threatened. And I am now in protection mode. That part of my brain isn't even online. With exception to the most very basic things I can do without having to think about them. I do them out of routine. I literally can't do any work at this point. And so how long, and by the way, this is the result of what we call the fight or flight chemical cocktail of cortisol and adrenaline. And cortisol and adrenaline are not bad at all. They kept our species safe. But how frequently was it that we came across a saber-toothed tiger? It wasn't every day. And it wasn't even every week. So when the danger was there, we marshaled our senses to stay and protect or fight or whatever we needed to do, and then everything went back to normal. But in the workplace, when somebody is disrespectful today and tomorrow, they're probably going to be disrespectful in the future also. So we find ourselves always on guard around these people. And what happens is this. It immediately injures or impairs all of our ability to do work. How long do you think cortisol and adrenaline persist in my body? Let's just say that someone really shut me down in a meeting in front of my peers. How long do you think that chemical tag stays in my body? Up to 3.5 hours. So we've taken a human asset of the business offline for the better part of half a day. But wait, there's more. If you sign in, if you order 2, when we have this happen even once, the human brain has a great way of reminding us not to forget it. Because every time I play that tape over, what do you think happens in my head? It releases it again. And then the next time I see that individual, even if it's at a distance, what do you think my brain does? Plays it again and release. So I become this walking toxic wasteland of adrenaline and cortisol that is keeping my brain from engaging. Has anybody ever had trouble falling asleep at night because you were playing back things that happened to you that were not so pleasant during the day? And at night, we even make it worse by catastrophizing and predicting like the end of the world as we know it for us. But this is basically what happens when we treat people with disrespect. Now, let's kind of boil it down. Disrespect is shown by actions or behaviors that damage another person's well-being or weaken their connections to the communities that sustain them. Anytime I make somebody look bad or I try to blame them for something, I'm weakening their connection to the communities that support them. And we're treating them potentially with disrespect. When we have organizations where this is rampant and unchecked, or even within one organization, even a department or a facility where this is happening, here's what happens. We end up with very low, or in some cases, no emotional engagement at all. Work for them becomes purely transactional. I give you 8 hours of my time and I get a paycheck. That's all I expect and that's all I want to give. Increased stress-related illness. This is a really important one. Most of you have heard of how stress damages us cardiovascularly, I'm assuming, right? How it actually leads to plaque buildup in our cardiovascular system. What most of you probably have not heard is that what long-term exposure to stress or stressful situations, including disrespectful people, also does is it neurologically damages us. It actually weakens to the point of killing brain cells, and it weakens the synaptic connections between the brain cells. So we not only become cardiovascularly compromised, we get stupid at the same time, which is kind of scary because now, has anybody in here ever, not maybe within Procter & Gamble, but has anybody ever left a job because of the way you were being treated someplace else, just out of curiosity? And when you did that, I'm willing to bet that you became physically healthier at the same time in your new environment. We actually feel lighter because those neurohormones, both the good ones and the bad ones, they aren't just things that stay in our brain. They're picked up by other organs in the body, the heart, the stomach. When someone says, oh, I got a pit in my stomach, that's because we have cortisol receptors in our stomach, actually. And we feel the same thing, but it's based on our interpretation of feeling threatened. Increased absenteeism and accidents. Why would we have more accidents in disrespectful cultures? Yeah, head and hands are in different places. I'm thinking about what someone just said to me while I'm working with heavy machinery, and I'm much more prone to having an accident. Above average employee turnover, and when people leave an organization voluntarily, which caliber of people normally leave? The good ones or the not so good ones? Why do the good ones leave? Because they can, right? If I know I have options, why would I want to stay someplace where I was being treated poorly? Information hoarding or hiding, and I know some of you have seen this. Information becomes like a weapon almost, or a bargaining chip. I have this and you don't. And and we've become very calculating under what circumstances and with whom we'll share information and data. What organization could be innovative and creative when people they aren't even communicating internally with each other? lower customer satisfaction and customer turnover, and ultimately we become less profitable, productive, and less resilient, all because of these two very different chemistries. Now, I'll share with you, so how pervasive of a problem do you think this is? Not just within P&G, but across the workforce in general. Do you think this is a big problem or a little problem? Well, the folks at Georgetown University did a study. They surveyed 800 managers and employees across 17 different industries, I think it was. And they did this in 2011. They didn't actually publish the results until 2013 because they wanted to make sure it was all peer-reviewed. And what they wanted to find out was how frequently people reported being treated disrespectfully, but then also what was the so what of that? When they were, what happened? And the first statistic, I think, is pretty significant. Half of all respondents said this was a once-a-week occurrence for them. Now, P&G has over 100,000 employees globally. I'm hoping you're better than average, but say you were average. What that would mean is that on a weekly basis, there's over 50,000 people who would say, yep, I was treated poorly at least one time this week. That means that we're marginalizing our human asset potential right then and there. The next set of questions was all about trying to uncover what happened. What was the so what of these disrespectful interactions? And here's what they said. 48% said that they intentionally decreased how hard they were working. Intentionally decreased it and dialed back. 47% said they intentionally decreased the actual amount of time spent at work. Is it 5 o'clock yet? Close enough. I better start packing up and slowly making my way to the door. 38% said they intentionally decreased the quality of their work. It was just get it off my desk, get it done, whatever. If I'm building something, just slop it together. 80% lost time worrying about the incident. 63% said they went out of their way to avoid the person involved, taking valuable thought energy away from that. 66% said their performance declined if they were doing their own performance review. And here's where it gets interesting. A full 78% said that their commitment to the entire company actually went down. Here's what's interesting about this statistic, and one that they had to go back and revisit. Even though it may have only been 1 or 2 people involved, the connectivity to the whole organization was compromised. How could that happen? Why would that happen?
We consider community and what affects one. It has a ripple effect on others.
And we're assuming that other people are aware of this and nobody's doing anything about it. So therefore, the organization must condone this kind of behavior. And so basically, that connectivity, that connective tissue between me and the company gets frayed to the point where 12% said that at one point in their career, they actually left. They left an employer because of the way they were treated. Now, here's the part that for everybody in here should be kind of scary. A full 25% admitted taking it out on their customers. They said that when they were treated poorly, whether it was an internal customer or an external customer, kind of crap rolled downhill from there. So let me ask you this. Have we made a business case for focusing on respect at this point so far? I think so. So let's talk about that. Let's talk very specifically about the broader implications for how successful of a business we're going to run. I'm assuming that there was a lot of thought that went into the creation of Procter & Gamble's core values: integrity, leadership, ownership, a passion for winning, and trust. Most of you are familiar with these, right? And under trust, this is where we see the most direct reference to this from a value. We actually say we respect our P&G colleagues, customers, and consumers, and we treat them as we want to be treated. A nice way of saying kind of the golden rule. We have confidence in each other's capabilities and intentions, and we believe that people work best when there is a foundation of trust. This is built in to the fabric, at least aspirationally, of how we want to run this business. This isn't new to anybody. We look at our guiding principles. The first guiding principle is we show respect to all individuals. We're not trying to change something. All we're trying to find out is how can we do a better job supporting something that's already there. And then we have the different behaviors that fall underlined from this. Believing that all individuals can and want to contribute to their fullest potential, valuing difference, etc. If you were to look at the core mission and the core value and principles, guiding principles for all the Fortune 500s, How much of a difference do you think there is from company to company? I think they kind of have the same group that kind of goes off site and says, let's change this around a little bit. They don't look that different. It's not that they're not important in that each group didn't authentically come up with them on their own, but these in some ways are universal, so they're not hard to arrive at. What is hard to do, though, is to take it beyond paper or the annual report and actually put the resources behind it to make sure that we're doing this to our full capacity and potential. And I'm going to share with you the story of one organization very quickly that did. It's the DuPont organization, for the most part non-competitive with Procter & Gamble, but they have 4 core values. Their core values were integrity, environmental stewardship, health and safety, and respect for people. And on an internal survey that they did back in 2009, they asked their employees to rate their perceptions of how committed the organization was to these 4 core values individually. And what they found was kind of surprising. Health and safety, far and away, was the highest, 99% favorable. Employees said, we do everything in the world we can to be healthy and safe. They got down to environmental stewardship and health and integrity, and the lowest was respect for people. You know how low it was? 86% favorable. How many of you think that's not bad? That's not bad at all. In fact, if most CEOs came back and they saw that they had 86% favorable, what would they do? Yep, and they would see, look how good we are. What's next, right? Well, Ellen Kullman, the CEO of DuPont, didn't say that. She said, this is really interesting because we see our core values, the 4 core values, as like 4 legs on a stool. And if those legs aren't the same length, the stool isn't very stable, is it? So she said, why would we have 99% of our employees who feel we're committed to health and safety, but only 86% who feel that we're committed to respecting each other? And so that launched an initiative that took over 5 years. It took 3 years. The majority of it was done in 3 years. But they actually created a platform around this content that we're going through today, and they rolled it out to 70,000 employees in 28 different languages using an internal army of 750 facilitators, their own people who weren't from HR and training, people who were line supervisors, people who wanted to become part of a cultural initiative within the organization. And here's what happened as a result of this. Over that same time period, now I'd like to say this was the only factor, but I'm sure it wasn't, because this also assumes you're making smart business decisions and being innovative and creative. The value of DuPont stock went up 400%. What I would like to think is that it takes a good organization and makes it a great organization. It allows you to fully leverage whatever other resources and capital you've developed and acquired as an organization, your intellectual capital, your speed to market, your customer relationships. But respect is like, it kind of fertilizes all of those things and makes it show a greater rate of return more quickly. In fact, after 4 years, one of their Respect for People champions wrote back, and she said, as gratifying as it has been to hear the positive personal feedback from our employees, the Respect Initiative is as much a business growth, is very much a strategy enabler. It's not just a nice to do. This is part of their core business strategy. Employees emotionally connect and contribute hard to an organization which values and allows them to grow both as human beings and as professionals. What was really interesting is in this last paragraph, she said, it continues to be an unforgettable journey for our corporation and has become instrumental in impacting how we conduct business both internally and externally. They actually went back and they looked at how they were dealing with their vendors, not just their customers, and they said, if we really want them to be part of our team, what do we need to do different to make sure that they're feeling treated with respect by us also? And they changed some of their payment terms and gave smaller vendors better preferential terms so they could be healthy and happy at the same time. So it really fundamentally changed a lot of their core business practices. Now, I can't guarantee that your stock is going to go up 400% in the next couple of years, but I will say it's going to unleash a lot of human potential that probably isn't being exercised right now.